North Union webpage in the coming days. The web page address is chicago.gov/North Union. And the web page includes all information about this proposal and information where comments and questions can be sent. It also includes a link to the last community meeting presentation and recording held for this proposal on November 12th, 2020. In terms of the participants who have registered, 60% responded that they live in the near north side community area, while 53% responded that they work in the near north side community area. 92% responded that they visit the near north community area very often or often. In terms of the meeting format, we will introduce the people on the meeting with us today. Alderman Burnett and Alderman Hawkins have some welcoming remarks. Then we will have JDL present their team as well as present updates to their proposal since we last saw this in November. We also have representatives from 2 community groups, Near North Unity Program and the River North Residents Association on the line. And then we will go into questions we have received from NNUP and then go into some of the questions we received in advance. And finally, we will answer questions that we have received in the live Q&A box. Attending this meeting from DPD, we have Cindy Rubik, Assistant Commissioner in the Central Region, and Kevin Barnes. From the Department of Housing, we have Ricardo Lopez, and from CDOT, we have Bill Higgins. And as I mentioned earlier, we have 2 community groups in attendance. We have Reverend Blakely and Michelle Drzinski from the Near North Unity Program, and we have Susan Morrow and Mike Riordan from the River North Residents Association. The PD boundaries for this proposal overlaps 2 wards. The part that is proposed to be redeveloped by JDL is in Alderman Burnett's ward, while the portion that is in part of Moody's campus is in Alderman Hopkins' ward. I'm going to hand it over to Alderman Burnett, who is going to say a few words, and then to Alderman Hopkins. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Emily. I guess the youngest go first. I really appreciate that. First of all, we want to give honor to God and thank God that we're all here, right? And we are grateful that we still have some proposed economic development going on in the city of Chicago. So I think that's a wonderful thing. We want to thank both of the organizations, the Near North Unity Program and also the River North Association, all of their assistance, but also we want to thank all of the other organizations that were contacted in this area for getting involved and giving their input. Also like to commend all of the people who's on, being interested and concerned about what's going on in your community. And we want to thank Moody Bible. Moody Bible has been a steward of this community for a long time. As I mentioned at the last meeting we had when I was a kid, the Moody Bible kids used to come get us in Cabrini Green and let us go over to Moody and play some bumper pool and ping pong while they, tell us about Jesus Christ. And it's always a good organization, and they still have people who go to their school that go to Cabrini Green and do that still today. So we're very grateful.
You need the keys?
We're very grateful for all of the contributions that they have given to this community in many ways. So, as you all know, there was a plan development done several years ago about what type of density would go on in this property, and we did the proposal about what's going to be developed here. I always say that with all of our developments and whenever we had these community meetings, we take everyone's input. All of your input is important. One of the things that we don't take into consideration is saving views. We do not believe in saving views, not only myself, but also the Planning Commission, the Zoning Committee. We don't make decisions based on views. So if we were to have made decisions based on views, nothing would have been built since I've been alderman for 26 years, and probably mostly in the city of Chicago. But we do take everything else into consideration. And from last meeting, they're going to tell you about some things that was mentioned and some things that was attended to. So with that, I'm going to allow my colleague to give his input. I'm glad to be partners with Alderman Brian Hopkins. We work very well together. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, Alderman Burnett, and I do appreciate the cooperation that you've extended to me. This is a project that is more in your ward than in mine, but nevertheless, you know, the opinions of my constituents are every bit as important, and you have really respected that, and I appreciate it. This is really the first major project I've had to deal with that wasn't exclusively in my ward. And I think that is actually unusual for the different zoning proposals that we in the city council deal with. Typically, they are just one ward, so it's only one alderman that has to engage on it. But in this case, even though it isn't a 50-50 split in terms of the geography, you have treated it as a 50-50 split, and I really appreciate that. So thank you for that. And I also do want to thank our community partners as well, and NUP and River North. Look, this is a major project, right? And so the two organizations have really stepped up. They're very experienced at reviewing proposals for development in their communities. This is not the first time they've had to deal with a project, even a major one like this one. So for those of you who are participating through those two organizations, that's fine. But I also want to welcome the people who are just here as individuals. They are not necessarily members of either of those two organizations. Your opinions are equally as valid as well. And we invite you to contact us directly. If you live in the 2nd Ward, contact my office. If you live in the 27th Ward, contact Alderman Burnett. Your thoughts, your comments, and your feedback can also have a bearing on this project just as individual residents of the community. You're equal stakeholders. And tonight in the presentation, you're actually going to see how this project has already been modified based on community feedback. That's what this is about. This is not just an exercise in chatting and having a dialogue. There's substantive decisions that still need to be made. And because of the scale and scope of this project, there's something else unique about it. The developer is coming to us with a major multi-year, multi-phase project that he is seeking authority now for all of the things that are going to happen over the course of the next several years, rather than coming back in a piecemeal fashion and getting approval for one building, coming back the next year, getting approval for another building. He's put it all on the table right now at the outset. The advantage to that is there's no bait and switch. What we approve here and what goes through the city council and through the plan commission, he is locked in. He can not change it without further public input and without further legislation. So what you see is what you get. There's no bait and switch. The downside to that is, from a community's perspective, it's a heavy lift. We have to look very carefully at this because, as I said, a lot of the decisions that are going to be made in the next couple of weeks will have long-term ramifications on our community and will really affect the neighborhood in all sorts of ways, traffic and density and all those other things that we typically talk about in a proposal like this. So for those of you that have chosen to step up to the plate and be a part of this process, thank you. Your input is not only welcome, but it's necessary to make sure that good decisions are made as we go forward with a project like this that's going to create a lot of jobs and also bring a lot of new residents to the community. So with that, I will turn it back to Emily, and you'll see the renderings from the architecture and the development team tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Alderman Hopkins and Alderman Burnett. Now I'll turn over the presentation to the development team, who will introduce their project team and go through their revisions of their proposal.
Great. Thank you, Emily. I'm Jim Letchinger with JDL Development. And for those of you that tuned in last time, you'll remember I probably talked for way too long, so I'm going to try to make it a little shorter this time. I'm pleased to have with me Sophie Bidek and Jim Plunkard from Hartshorn Plunkard. They're the master architect for this project. Also want to offer a special welcome to my friends from Moody Bible, Eric Holquist, and I think Janet's on, Janet Stiven. We've worked hand in hand throughout this process. They are a valued member of this community and will be moving forward. So it's been great to have their involvement. Want to certainly thank the Near North Union program for putting this meeting together, for all the work that they put in, as well as River North residents, These are everybody involved here, are volunteers. They put in tremendous time on everybody's behalf. They've been very fair and very open. And I think the input has really been very helpful in guiding our direction moving forward. And a special thanks to the city's Department of Planning. We have had almost every week, we've had a meeting. Emily has steered this at the direction of all the others at the city. And it's been collaborative, it's been impactful, and we're very pleased to present something tonight that has been modified. And quite frankly, we've modified it in light of the fact that we had very little objection to the last presentation, but it was an opportunity to make it better, to improve not only the architecture, but the flow, as well as open space, traffic, et cetera, all of which we'll demonstrate here tonight. And of course, I have to thank both Alderman Burnett and Alderman Hopkins. Speaking of people who work tirelessly, I don't know how many meetings they do every week, every night, but thank you for all of your support, your input, your honesty. I wish it was like the old days and you would just approve it, but you're putting us through the paces and it's the right thing to do. It's also really helped evolve this project. So it's just been a terrific collaboration. I'll quickly run through a little bit about JDL and our history. We have a very strong history in this neighborhood. Quite frankly, I grew up in this neighborhood and live in the neighborhood now. We have focused on this area because we love it, we believe in it, and we've built up and down Wells Street East. You can see number 9 Walton, which a condo building about 3 blocks east of this property, buildings flanking both north and south on Wells Street, as well as a building currently under construction called One Chicago, which is only 3 blocks to the east, located between Dearborn and State at Chicago Avenue. Obviously a large project and a great, I think probably, a great indication of JDL's capabilities to deliver a project while maintaining peace in the neighborhood. Of course, there's traffic closures. Of course, there's dirty streets. We work tirelessly to make sure that we take every phone call and we respond to every issue. And quite frankly, 2.5 years into this, it's really been a very, very easy project. And for the most part, very few complaints. And that's not an accident. And that's something that we deliver wherever we build. Just going through the timeline, and I'll run through this quickly. As you can see, this process has been going on for some time. And the first introduction was to Alderman Burnett and Alderman Hopkins over a year ago. And we actually, I believe we might have had the final meeting with DPD that was in person last March. Kind of a sad date, but an exciting date, because a year later, we think a lot of things have changed in a year. So, and I believe last time on this presentation, back in September or November 12th, I'm sorry, they were pretty dark days. It was tough. People were locked in their homes. We weren't sure if there was a light at the end of the tunnel. We didn't have a vaccine. And it was scary. And, at that time, I didn't know if I was really going to move forward with the development. I didn't know if people were going to live in the city. And I have to tell you, the last 3 months have been so exciting to see the vaccine roll out, to see new generation, new excitement living in the city. As somebody who owns some apartments in the city, we have seen probably the most activity in January and February of people moving back into downtown than I've ever seen since I've been leasing apartments. So we're very optimistic. We want to be part of the future of Chicago, the landscape of Chicago, and the ultimate economic success of Chicago. So just running through this agenda, you can see how many meetings we've had. Go to the next slide. And we're still going. Tonight is our second community meeting. And then we're hoping to move on to Plan Commission. We are confident that we have, certainly going to be those in the neighborhood that may or may not want this to go forward. But we've listened to the neighbor groups, we've listened to the neighbors directly, and we've made tremendous modifications. We want this to be, a contributor to the community. We want this to be something that we're all proud of. New projects are always scary. I've done a lot of this now, and I can't tell you how many times I've had people express concerns about a new building. It's too big, it's too tall, it's going to block my light, it's going to block my view. And yet what it does for the area, what it does to values, when it's done, I've never failed to get positive input from those same people. So just running through the neighborhood, North Union, that name is not an accident. This is the union of many neighborhoods on the north side. As you can see, our little sub area B and A there in the middle of this chart. You've got River North to your south, the former Cabrini Green, which is a future development site with the CHA to the west, Old Town to the north, and then the Gold Coast immediately to the east, and just blocks from Lincoln Park. This is a big hole in the donut, and it's been that way because Moody Bible has controlled this land for many years. They've utilized it for different things, but they now find there's a higher and better use, and they have enough of their own property to continue doing the great work that they do in the community. As you can see, it's a fairly vacant piece of land located between primarily, and here highlighted now, the area left that is highlighted in yellow is the Moody Bible campus. It is going to remain, including the empty parking lot, which has potential development rights in the future. And the area outlined in purple is the area that we're going to be developing. Most of this are small, 2 and 3 story buildings or surface parking lots. There are some existing buildings here that will be retained. They're orange rated, or we feel they are significant structures. So we're excited to weave those into the project. Height's always a topic of discussion. And as you'll see, our area, the yellow area is the existing Moody Bible campus. They do retain some rights in the future, and we set aside some limitations for what they can and can't do. But as we proceed with our development, you'll see that our buildings really start from the south in the pink and move to the north. They get progressively larger, with the tallest buildings being at the very northwest end. Quite frankly, that's where we see a lot of density right now. There are 3 buildings, one under construction, that are moderately close in size to those 2 buildings. Those buildings are many years out, and we believe that we're going to create the demand here and create the energy here that we'll be excited to build those in 6 to 10 years. Highlighting the transportation opportunities here, and parking, cars, traffic is always a major concern for neighbors. There's tremendous public transportation. There's bike lanes, tremendous bus, multiple bus stops, a brown line, a red line, purple line. There's a fairly new station located just at Franklin and Chicago Avenue. You have the red line at Division and Clark Street, and divvy stations, including others, new ones that will be added on our property, available throughout. For those of you who tuned in last time and actually decided to tune in again, this was the project as proposed previously. We have made some modifications that we want to highlight now. The first thing, nope, they all popped up. So starting from the west, 312 West Walton Street, we made modifications to this building for a number of reasons, including providing more open space, as well as for what we've learned in the way of some wind concerns. 310 and 300 over to the north, similar concept. We also moved that building further west, 300 West Oak further west, in order to provide more open space for the Walter Payton School. Going to the south, you'll see as all those townhomes have been removed, and we've repurposed the building that you see, the 213, near the left side of the screen. And now we can show you where we are today. So here, I think one of the important things to highlight is the large open space immediately west of the West Oak Street row houses. That was occupied by townhomes. It was previously about 25,000 square feet. It is now over 60,000 square feet of open space. This was, certainly we had a lot of input about open space from the neighborhood. everybody in the neighborhood should know they've got a very strong open space friend in the city. DPD was pushed us really hard on creating additional open space. As you look down Wells Street, you'll see changes to the sculpting. And then 215 West Walton Street, which where we had 3 single-family homes, is now a small 6-story structure. To give you an idea of some of the architectural changes, we were asked for more architectural sculpting along Wells Street. You can see on the left, very rectilinear buildings, whereas on the right, they've got a lot more movement to them. We've changed, as you'll see in the renderings later, we have modified the curtain walls and the skin in order to make them more intriguing, more interesting. And then we've made similar changes, and these are actually rather well sculpted buildings, but we've made changes to the bases of 312, 300, and 310 West Oak Street in order to improve the ground level wind conditions, which happens to be a new program. It's a new requirement of the city to study ground wind conditions. We're not really called the Windy City because of our winds, but it is a windy city. And especially in the winter, when it's 0 degrees out, you don't really need to get blasted with a 40-mile-an-hour wind. This is something that's rarely been studied. It's been studied for building movement. It hasn't been studied in order to create a better environment at the street level. Here you can see in purple what is highlighted as modifications at the podium level of 312 West Walton in order to provide wind relief, so that we take those areas as you're walking down Oak Street and Walton Street, and we make them much more palatable. The winds are greatly reduced. Again, this is primarily a winter issue. And then we also made modifications higher at those podiums, as well as some modifications to the 300 and 310 for the very same reasons. People do talk about views, they talk about light, they talk about sun. So we have done some shade and sunlight studies. What's interesting is we are building a fair amount of density here. I should say it is the density that was set forth when the city did overlay this district. We're not really increasing the zoning from the underlying, from what it is currently zoned as the underlying zoning. But as you'll see in the summer, where you have very long hours of sunlight, in the middle of the day, we cast actually no shadows to speak of whatsoever. And even in the morning and the evening, most of the shadows are really focused within our own property. And then in the winter, where we don't get a lot of sunlight anyways, very little shadowing that impacts any other spaces. Height is always an issue. Again, we have modified some of the heights. We have a progressive height structure where we start on the shorter end near Wells Street. Actually, all the Wells Street buildings have been tried to maintain a contextual feel with everything along Wells Street. But as you'll see, we range from 50, 70 feet along Franklin and Chestnut, and then we get as high as 690 feet. Again, that will be the last building built many, many years out. And we are building this in phases, whether 1 and 2 flip, or we build one building before another. We are starting in the areas of phases 1 and 2. This is a question that's come up. It's actually something we had to get our arms around. How do we manage these parks? We're going to be creating 2.5 acres of public open space, and it's privately owned, publicly available. So we are working with the city on a DEMA, Development and Maintenance Agreement, which will provide ongoing requirements in order for us to maintain this property. We also, and this agreement will need to be in place before we can get started on any of the construction. We do have, as well as the green space, which we'll talk about in more detail, we will also have a tremendous amount of public art displayed. And talking about the parks, we have 3 main park areas. The first one is on between Chestnut and Locust, Franklin and Wells, surrounded by 3 of our buildings. 871 is an existing building that's being repurposed. You can see if you look at bubble 1, the arrival to the park from the southwest, tree-lined access. The building is set far back so that it's an inviting park even from the west. And then as you look at the park coming from the northeast, it has a campus feel, very open. It is really meant to be a passive park for people to sit and read, have picnics, probably be some tables and things out there, as we hope 878 will provide some sort of food service within the retail space there. This is the newly expanded park. We took advantage of the extra space and added a water feature. This can be, not only does this add beauty, it creates some noise and some sound, pleasant sound, but also something that we can envision. It will be done in a way similar to Millennium Park, where kids can play in this on hot summer days and enjoy the park beyond just sitting around. This also will be an active park. We haven't designed the actual play areas yet, but there will be kids play areas within this park. And the last park is, as somebody who lives in this neighborhood now, desperately needed dog park. There is no dog park within walking distance of most of the buildings around here. This is actually going to be split into two parks, one for large dogs, one for small dogs. It is an off-leash park. It will be landscaped, it will be designed, and it will, of course, as mentioned, be open to the public. And extremely excited to deliver a really first-rate dog park in this neighborhood. Traffic, we hear a lot about traffic. We have done a traffic study. We've provided to the city. The city, CDOT has also provided its input. As you can see, some of the improvements that will be made as a function of that study. Traffic lights will be added along Orleans. Left turn adjustments and signal timing modifications will be made on major thoroughfares. These are all done by us, or at least paid for by us. Numerous pedestrian crosswalks, high visibility crosswalks, in order to provide safe passage, especially at Oak Street, where people will be crossing in order to get to the dog park and then back to the other green space. And then along with traffic is ingress and egress. And again, as somebody who lives just 4 blocks to the east or 3 blocks to the east of this building, I'm as sensitive to traffic as anybody. Quite frankly, approximately 2,600 units sounds daunting. It's not, it doesn't create the traffic of a grocery store, quite frankly. It doesn't have the transient nature. People are not in and out as often. We're building less than 50% of that number of parking spaces. But in order to ensure that and to comfort the neighborhood, if you look at all the ingress and egress locations, the biggest parking deck is at the very northwest of this property, and you'll see the pink and blue arrows. The ingress and egress to this garage takes place at that location and at the very west end of Oak Street under the L tracks. So if you're leaving that building, you're going straight west and you're not coming into a more dense neighborhood. Every building has dedicated drop-off and pickup locations, delivery service, drop-off and pickup. And as we all know, there is no shortage of Uber drivers and DoorDash people, et cetera. One specific detail I want to point out along Oak Street, that private drive previously had an ingress and egress at both Walton and at Oak Street. As you can see now, there's no longer nothing is noted at Oak Street at the request and the suggestion of Alderman Hopkins, who has concerns and is very focused on the traffic on Oak Street. That was removed, so the only access in and out of that building, and this also serves single-family row homes, will be off of Walton Street. So people have the opportunity to go straight west on Walton and avoid any of the traffic to the east. All the buildings really offer that. There is very little off-site loading. Every building has proper loading. So we've taken great care to make sure that the cars that are actually creating traffic are not creating it in those areas that impact our neighbors. this just gives you, just want to give you a little context of the materials. The materiality as we get taller gets very light, whereas at the base, especially along Franklin, which has a lot of older loft buildings, we'll maintain more solid materials, more brick. But the idea is that as the buildings get taller, they are reflective, which actually in many cases adds sunlight to neighbors, doesn't reduce it, because you get a lot of reflected light that you wouldn't otherwise get. So the site as it looks today, which it's, you know, all low level, 1-2-story buildings, parking lots, big open field. And as we envision it, it's going to grow. If we could build it this fast, it would be great. But here you see, you know, the buildings as they will appear when we're completed. Again, the buildings all the way to the left are the final phase. You know, it seems because it's never been there, it appears that we're adding a tremendous amount of density. But if you take a step back and look at it in context with the buildings to the north, the buildings to the south, and certainly the buildings to the east, it's actually very contextual and fills in this hole in the donut that's been missing for a long time, creating a much more connected neighborhood. And then if you take a look at this from the other direction, very similar situation. The only thing that throws you off here is that the building to the north with the red crane on it, you can see how high the red crane is actually, that's about where that arrow is, about where that building will end. So it's really, you know, we're only slightly taller than that finished product, which is probably at this point is now all the way up. And then I want to show you some views and some renderings. If you're looking down Franklin Street in front of the Park Chestnut, you'll see a lot of lower level buildings. The building on the left is not ours, it's existing. But you'll see all the buildings on the right are not particularly imposing. Quite frankly, Park Chestnut is the largest residential building that is really impacted by our development. We were sensitive to that. We tried to keep the buildings immediately next door lower, just because it was, you know, it was the right thing to do. And as you look down Franklin Street, you'll see you do get taller. And, you know, we'd like to think we have a stunning monument at the end of Franklin. This building we're very proud of. This will be the first new wood timber loft building built in Chicago. They've built in other places. There's a few commercial buildings in Chicago built, but not a residential building. So this not only is a way to use some unique materials, but also an opportunity to build a building that's really in keeping with Franklin Street. That building to the left that has a slightly redder brick, that is actually an existing building. So that's the look of Franklin, and we want to respect that and pay homage to it as we construct here. Here's a street level view of both 878 and 920 North Wells. These buildings have taken on a lot more design. Quite frankly, back in November, this was still a work in progress. We have had the opportunity to spend a lot more time on this. We've had plenty of input from the Department of Planning, and as well as, you know, listening to the neighbors. But most important about this is the amount of space and relief at the street level. All of our buildings are set back from Wells Street, so there's tremendous amount of opportunity for greenscape, for open walking. Wells Street is currently a bike street, so there's already bike traffic on Wells Street, but we really want to create a walking environment along Wells and to the west as you move through the property. Here's another shot of the park, again, expressing that more of a campus feel. The building directly in the middle is the wood timber building, so it does have a little bit of industrial feel, but it's a low-level building, which also provides a lot more light for the park. This also has some water features, and again, all of the parks will display artwork. Our focus on the art is going to be local Chicago artists, and we will be proceeding with that in the near future. Here's another view of the two buildings along Wells Street. You can see there's variation in height, variation in architecture and design, mullionization, and expression of window wall. This building hasn't changed. This building really pays, once again, you know, respects its architecture. The architecture of this neighborhood takes on the character of a terracotta, an old 1900 terracotta Chicago building. However, we're not using terracotta, so we're not going to have scaffolding on it all the time. This will be a more durable product. Not a very big building, lots of balconies, lots of outdoor space, and again, a very approachable streetscape. This is really a view that just screams Chicago. For better or for worse, Chicago is known for its L. It's iconic, and some of our taller buildings are along the L tracks. That is to shield the noise for others. Our building will be built in a way that the noise will not impact our residents. But we want to express some of this steel and structural element of the L in the building in 312 West Walton, which is the most prominent building along the tracks. Looking back at the newly expanded park, again, here's the other side of 312, and you can see how some of the structure is expressed. Again, respecting the L tracks and that feel, with a tremendous amount of open air and light to the east of it. Here's the view looking back from the other side. Our park system now is, to give you some perspective, for those of you that enjoy Washington Square Park, our parks actually are just slightly smaller than that park. So we're very excited to deliver a lot of open space. Here's a view of the dog park. This is the entryway. It will be a pathway. It will be landscaped. There will be materials used that can survive dogs playing, and as well as being safe for dogs' feet, dogs' nails, etc. And looking back, looking southwest from Wells Street, looking over at the Ogden School softball and baseball field, you can see that we have, as soon as you get just west of our building along Oak Street, which I also should point out has gotten narrower. It used to have more depth from east to west. So we have made that more slender, allowing a tremendous amount of open light and air on that softball field. Final rendering, which we're excited about, is really shows you how the park system has been woven in to the landscape of this development, and how sightlines are offered as you're walking. Certainly at the pedestrian level, you get a lot of light, you get a lot of open air. The single-family homes fronting the park. This is a family environment. There are certainly a lot of apartments here, but there will also be single-family row homes. There will be condos. There'll be larger apartments available. So we are very hopeful that we're going to have families in this city and in this development for a long time to come. And the final view, again, showing that shows the building to our north in its completed form. As you can see, we are taller, but we are also more slender and more architecturally designed. So what are the benefits of this project? Why does anybody want this besides us? There are tremendous benefits. This is currently owned by Moody Bible Institute. They are a non-for-profit organization, and therefore this is a non-taxable parcel. So when completed, this development will increase the tax base per year by more than $20 million. That's a huge increase from zero, and very valuable to the city. We will have, because this is going to be built in phases, we'll be employing 500 to 1,000 construction workers annually for the next 10 years. And when completed, there will be over 400 permanent jobs, and that's probably on the low side. And one thing that I really want to stress, because when you hear $20 million tax increase, it's not tax increment, and it's not TIF. We have absolutely no public funding whatsoever. This is privately funded. We are getting no assistance. We've requested no assistance from the city, and we are not getting any. Just highlighting some of the features: 2.5 acres of open public space, over 26,000 committed to a dog park, a 23,000 square foot contemplative park with public art, and then 61,000 square feet. This was a 25,000 square foot open space before. It's been increased to 61,000 feet with areas for kids activities as well as the water feature. And then on the property, there's also 38,000 square feet of private green space. So, it's critical to have active uses, to have eyes on the streets. Every time you see crime, and unfortunately we do see crime, Most of it takes place in areas where they're dark, they're not active. So activating this area, on top of what Moody already does here, will add a tremendous amount of comfort and safety. It will be a sustainably built project. We will be seeking a lead neighborhood development. All of the new paving we add will be permeable paving, allow water to move through. We will exceed the energy code by at least 10% and reduce indoor water usage by at least 25%. We will divert construction waste from landfills by 80%. Significant bike parking will be included both for residents as well as visitors. So there will be indoor and outdoor bike parking. At a minimum, we will have 1-to-1 parking per unit. I think we'll ultimately end up with substantially more. One of the advantages of this location is that you're right on one of the most significant bike paths. Electric car charging, I don't even know how to put a number on it. It's growing rapidly, and we will have the electrical capacity in order to manage that well into the future. And of course, newly created stormwater collection. The one thing that many don't understand is that when we build new buildings, we actually improve flooding concerns and water collection, because we build underground water collection systems that allow us to store rainwater in the case of a very substantial rain and distribute it back into the sewer systems, which might not have been able to handle it otherwise at regulated times. We were very proud to be progressive with our affordable program, with the main highlight being the number of units that we are building on site. So the underlying current zoning would require 10% or 266 affordable units. We are buying and we are creating many more than that. 236 will actually be built on site. As you can see from the mix, a substantial number of these can handle couples and or families, because that's one of the flaws in a lot of the affordable housing that has been constructed. They have focused on studios and 1-bedrooms, and it's just too small. And families can't. It doesn't help families, and we want to help families. And then on top of that, we will either build 118 units offsite, and this will be a function of where and when we can build, or at a minimum, we will contribute over $22 million to the Affordable Housing Opportunity Trust Fund. Affordable rental units will be reserved for households earning up to 60% of AMI. And what we're really proud of is that these units will be distributed amongst all the buildings. We are not trying to build a non-inclusive affordable housing building. The affordable housing units will be built and will be inclusive with each building, with each phase, and interspersed amongst the market rate units. We have proactively engaged in a work program and a labor program that we think will have tremendous impact on our community and the communities around Chicago in general. So what you see in front of you is the requirements of our subcontractors and ourselves as we build this project. 25% of hours will have to be performed by minority and or female individuals, and 10% of those at a minimum will have to be African American. 10% hours performed by apprentice tradespeople, so that young people can learn and get into the trades. The general contractors that build these buildings will also contribute a minimum of $10,000 to any of the workforce organizations, and I'll explain what they do in a moment. Subcontractors, every subcontractor that gets hired on this job, from an electrician to a plumber to a carpenter, well, that company will have to contribute $5,000 to those same groups. And as the developer, and this is something that I have a couple of developer friends that might not be that thrilled with me, but we're making a commitment to contribute $5,000 for every 100,000 square feet that we're building. Go back one more second. Sorry, Sophie. So I just want to point out that some of the organizations that are represented here, these are the groups that will be available for these contributions. These are groups that are helping young people, especially people of color, in neighborhoods that they don't get the proper education. They're not able to pass the test to get into the trades, and therefore the unions have been able to be a little more selective in allowing them in. So these are tremendous organizations. They need funding. We're going to do our part in funding them so that these young people can get educated, they can pass the test, and they can become union workers, which are incredible paying jobs. And quite frankly, it's an industry where it's aging out and we need young people. And that is the end of the presentation. So thank you all very much. I tried to move a little faster than the last one. I don't think I even got anybody from DBT yelling at me. But we are certainly happy to take some questions and answer anything that we can.
Thank you, Jim. So we'll start off with some questions from NNUP. I don't know, Michelle or Revlin Blakely, if you're going to ask them.
I can ask them, Emily.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, Jim. The community is really excited about the green space you're developing. When you develop the parks at the North Union Development, will you be using synthetic grass? And if so, what % will be synthetic grass versus real sod in the parks?
That's a great question. It is actually still a work in progress. I think that we definitely want to introduce synthetic grass in some of the dog areas. Grass doesn't hold up, it turns into mud. So that is already planned. Whether or not it makes sense, and we really need to check with our landscaping people and understand the environmental consequences of how much we may or may not use in other park areas. Right now, we're planning on active green space.
Thank you. The next questions we had were the alleyways in your development. Will they be public or private? And what will that mean for garbage collection? Will the city be collecting the trash, or will that be private haulers?
The alleys will be public alleys. We're actually making improvements to them and widening them so they're more usable. Trash collection within private buildings is done by private contractors. So the city actually will not have any additional burden on them for trash collection.
Okay, thank you. So who would plow the alleys then?
Well, we would hope the city would, but I think we'll be plowing.
Okay, thanks. And then the final question we had, would you support putting the Brown Line Division Street L stop back in the community? And if so, how would you help with this effort?
I can take this question. So DPD and CDOT are aware of this proposed station. It was mentioned and identified in the Central Area Action Plan, which was adopted in 2009. Design and construction of a new station in this location would likely total more than $100 million. And we know there's competing funding needs here with all the CHA property and the need for replacement CHA resident housing. However, the near north TIF is expiring at the end of this year. So DPD is already preparing and working on this TIF extension with a community meeting expected as early as next month as part of that legal process. We hear and understand the station request, and we will continue to coordinate on whether it is feasible, and if it is feasible, how it could be funded.
Thank you so much, Emily.
Thank you.
And that's all our questions. Thanks, guys.
Thank you, Michelle. So the next portion of the Q&A is the questions we received in advance. So I will moderate those questions. The first question we received is a two-parter. Will there be additional park space included in the development? So part of this was covered in the presentation. And we also just received a comment and concern that the development would block the sun in the neighborhood.
So I guess there's a question there, sorry. I think we provided a shadow study that shows what the effects of the buildings and the sun, very little impact on the rest of the community. So I think that answers that question. Was there another question? I'm sorry, I was reading the question.
And then there was just another question, just will there be additional park space included in the development? And you did cover a little bit in that recent update that you made.
Yes, we've added over 35,000 feet from the previous presentation.
Thank you. And then we received just another one. Why is one architect designing the whole project?
This is a major undertaking for JDL, and we have done a tremendous amount of work with HPA over the years. When we started down this road, the one commitment that HPA made was that each one of the individual buildings was going to be done by different groups. They have a large office, a lot of different talented people. And so, but at the same time, we wanted the leadership of that firm to provide some continuity amongst the design, to provide the flow, to provide the site planning. And so, you know, I think if you take a hard look at these buildings, while you would certainly see some similarities, there's a tremendous difference in the architecture from building to building.
Thank you. The next question we have, we received a question if the proposed density could be increased for this project. And then also, can the main towers be designed to look less corporate from an architecture standpoint?
The density, I think we've all kind of set a standard for the density. I don't think we have any intentions of increasing that. I think we'd have a lot more public meetings if we were. I'm not sure what the main towers are. If that's the two towers to the northwest. I think if you can get a close-up look of those are rhombus-shaped towers. They're actually extremely unique architecture. They have a tremendous amount of movement. And again, these are big buildings. They're hard to see in these little renderings. You'll see detailing that is quite different from an office building.
Thank you. And then another question, we received a few questions about the potential increase of traffic into the area. What is the impact of this development from a traffic standpoint? And what are the solutions? What will be done to ensure the development does not increase noise or congestion, particularly on wells?
We ran through the decisions we made and the ingress and egress for each building that is going to really have a great impact on any traffic for the neighborhood. It's going to be 1,000, 1,200 cars over the next 10 to 12 years that may or may not be added here. Is that going to increase traffic? Of course it is. Residential traffic is not highly transient. It doesn't have the same burden on streets that commercial traffic does. If we built one large grocery store here, quite frankly, it would create more traffic than this entire development. We have traffic experts that can speak to that better than I can. But you know, the nice thing about residential is that it's not highly transient. A lot of people here are not going to use their cars on a regular basis. So, and if they do, they have the ability to go straight west, to go to Orleans, to go straight down Wells Street. Obviously, if they want to go over to Michigan Avenue, if they want to go to Oak Street, they're going to drive that way. As far as noise, there will be more noise. This is a vacant area right now. But we're not building bars. We're not building, you know, that sort of entertainment venue. So the noise is going to be your typical walking street noise.
Okay, thank you. And then we kind of covered this at the beginning of the presentation, but we received a question if the heights of the buildings would block the views of current buildings.
There are some buildings that will probably, I'm sure, be impacted. There's some buildings along Oak Street that are small buildings, they're lower level buildings. So will some of their views be blocked? I would imagine they will. If you go much further east and you go actually to the building where I live, or to West Delaware, is there going to be some impact on those views? Sure. On the other hand, they're going to have a view of a new development. So it does happen. It's life in the city.
Okay, thank you. And then I know this was a little covered in the presentation a little bit. Will the development have any on-site renewable energy options? I don't know if you want to get into more detail about that.
Still to be studied, and obviously those technologies are advancing quickly. We will take advantage of any opportunity that's there when the time comes. Great,
thank you. All right, and I think the only questions we have left are now in the Q&A box, so I'll just go ahead and read some of those. Someone's asking if we can, if you can revisit and clarify the affordable housing being delivered. The slide was just a little bit more confusing.
I've got to remember the exact numbers offhand, but I believe it's 200 and how many units, Sophie?
Sophie, could you share your screen and show that slide again?
236, Jim.
236. So 236 units will be built on site. They will be woven within all of the market rate units. Each building will contain a percentage of affordable units. Additionally, we will build another 88.
You were going to build either another 118 or an equivalent in lieu payment.
Okay, so 118 units will also be either built off-site, or we will contribute the almost $22 million to the Affordable Housing Trust Fund to be utilized to make housing improvements for those elsewhere.
Thank you. And then another question we received in the chat or the Q&A box is, will there be any improvements to areas below the L tracks adjacent to the development to make it more friendly for pedestrians to walk under?
The answer is I certainly hope so. We will certainly do our part, and we'll work with the CTA, who actually controls that area, to improve all those areas. It's been done elsewhere, and I think it will certainly be done here.
Okay. And one other one we have is, what do you expect the range of prices to be for these units?
Way too early to tell. They probably were different last February than they are today. So they're very market driven. Really don't have a range of pricing yet. These are rental apartments, so these are not for sale. I would say that the starting rental price, if I had to put a number on today, is going to be about $1,500 a month, and not obviously not including the affordable units. And they can go up to some of the larger units that will be as high as $10,000.
Okay, thank you. I don't think we see any other questions in the Q&A box at this time. So I think this wraps the present. Oh, I do see more. Hold on. What else can be done about traffic congestion? When people don't use their own cars, they use Uber, which often makes congestion worse, not better. Wells Street does not flow well today. You have a comment or?
Uber, I certainly concur with the Uber statement. The biggest problem with Uber is that most buildings have not been built to accommodate pickup and drop off. We are providing access spots at each building for that to take place. Also, a lot of them don't know where they're driving or how to drive, but I think they're getting better as time goes on. Those that are experienced and know how to get around are going to go west. They're going to go, if they're going downtown, they're going to go west to Orleans, or they're going to go, they will go down Wells Street to go downtown. If they're going north to the highway, they'll go west into Chicago Avenue or to Division Street. So that's really, the answer is, really good common sense. And also we are, surrounded by public transportation. And what we've seen in our buildings is that, yes, people use Ubers, but a lot of people also utilize, the public transportation that's available to them.
We also received a related question about how deliveries will be handled.
That will be the same way as Ubers. We are providing, we will be providing designated drop-off areas, and there will be systems within the buildings for receiving those, so that people aren't running around like crazy trying to figure out where to drop them off.
Okay, thank you. And then we have another question. Will the developer be working with the high school on apprenticeships?
We have not talked to Peyton about that. I don't have any plans to do that. It is, I think there will be apprenticeships and other opportunities with other high schools. I don't know that it would be with Peyton.
Okay. And then another question we received is, how many stories are the two tallest towers?
47 and 56. The tallest one, obviously, to the west, being 56 stories tall.
And then one other question we received is, what are the plans for providing CTA access at Division? Accessing the brown or purple lines is difficult, and there is no on the platform at Sedgwick.
I think this is a duplicate, isn't it?
Oh, yeah. Sorry about that.
Did we answer the two tallest towers? How many stories? Yeah. Okay, I think we're done then.
Okay.
Great.
Well, I'd like to thank everyone for joining us today and, everyone spending time in their evenings to hear the presentation. I'd like to thank the aldermen and the community groups that have joined us. And I don't know if anyone has any closing remarks, but I hope everyone has a great evening and enjoys this nice weather that we're getting.
Yeah, just real briefly, the commentary period is of course still open. So if any additional questions or feedback or input come up, aldermanhopkins.com is my website. Please submit your statements and we'll take it under consideration. So thank you.
Thank you very much.
And that's the same with Alderman Burnett. We'll take all at wburnett@aldermanburnett.com.
Also the same for JDL Development. My email and actually my cell phone number are made available, and feel free to reach out if you have questions.
Yeah, but I also think that it's fair, guys, to let folks know what's the next step.
Sure. We'll continue the review of the project. We'll see if we get any additional feedback. And then the next step is if we don't receive consensus from everyone. They filed their plan development application today, so it was introduced at City Council, and then we'll schedule a potential plan commission hearing. Any news or updates can be found on our North Union DPD webpage, including this recording today. Cindy, I don't know if you have anything to add.
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. I mean, when we receive a complete plan commission application and all of their documentation, and it's been reviewed by all the agencies that need to review it, we'll put it on the agenda. And we can also receive comments, dpd@cityofchicago.org. So if you need more time to review the deck has been posted on our webpage. We shared that in the Q&A as well as in the presentation. And you can always submit your comments or questions to the department that way, dpd@cityofchicago.org.
Thank you, Cindy.
Thank you.
Oh, there was one more question. When will the development start?
Sure.
Well, it kind of ties in with the last question.
Yeah.
We are hoping to start the development still this year. At least the first building before the end of this year. This city, it needs a shot in the arm at every level. Development is always a great sign that the city is coming back, and which I know it is. So we're pushing hard to get started before the end of the year.
So once they get to the planning point, then they have to go to zoning, and then they have to go to the city council. So just that part takes a couple of months, and then it takes several months to get permits too. Maybe some people can get them faster than others, but I think the shortest one is about 6 months, I think, from what I understand, 6 to 9 months. So
True.
We're working with the department on that.
You are?
Correct.
I'd like to say thank you on behalf of neighborhood organizations. We value the partnership we have with NNUP. We value the partnership that we have with Alderman Burnett and Alderman Hopkins and Alderman Riley in the work that we do. It's been a very inclusive, transparent process here. We've gotten a lot of feedback from people in the community. So I really want to thank the JDL team and thank DPD, and to thank everyone who's been involved in this process. It has really been a very inclusive, transparent process, and the project is better for it. So thank you all.
Thank you.
Mike,
Great.
thank you. Thank you very much for those words. We too appreciate you and the partnership that we share with you. We also appreciate Jim and JDL and as well as DPD for hosting this event. There are several members of the Near North community, as you know, that are very concerned about this Brown line. So we look forward to discussing more about the Brown line and hoping to see it come to fruition.
Thank you. Yes, we understand the concern about the Brown line. Absolutely. Okay, anybody else want to say any parting words? All right, Kevin, I think we can end the webinar then. Thank you so much for participating.
Yeah, thank you, everyone. Appreciate your participation.
Thank you. God bless.
All right, all.
Thank you, everybody.
Stay healthy.
Stay safe.
Stay healthy.